Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Jeff's Baking Blog. Today I'm going to make something which one of my subscribers mentioned to me in a comment, and I hadn't heard of it before, and it's called Teviotdale Pie. And this is a savoury pie with minced beef and onions as the base, and on top is a suet pastry. Now this recipe, or this pie, seems to originate from the Scottish border area, particularly perhaps around Hoyk, and it's very old as a recipe, but I hadn't heard of it. And apparently it's a way of making a hearty meal out of a little meat. So you don't use that much minced beef, but you have a nice crust of suet on the top, which is very filling. It's actually quite easy to make, and I actually made it the other day and it was wonderful. The best minced beef I've ever made, actually. So I'm hoping this turns out as well. And I'll go on to the ingredients. And for the meat filling, I have 500 grams, which is 17.5 ounces of minced beef or ground beef. And I have 1 onion, which I have chopped quite finely. And then I also have 300 millilitres of beef stock and 2 teaspoons of Worcester sauce. Now the Worcester sauce isn't necessarily part of the original recipe, but I do think it gives an extra flavour. And for my beef stock, I've actually used simply water and 2 OXO cubes, beef OXO cubes, and they give a tremendous flavour. So that's for the meat. And then for the crust, I have 225 grams of plain flour. That's 1.5 cups based on scooping packed flour into a 250 millilitre cup. And I have 3 teaspoons of baking powder. Now most of the recipes I saw didn't use baking powder at all, but they used 225 grams of self-raising flour. If you don't have self-raising flour, which I don't, then plain flour and baking powder combined make the same thing. Then I have 25 grams, which is 3 tablespoons of corn flour. Then I have 300 millilitres, 1.25 cups of milk, and of course my 300 millilitres of stock is also 1.25 cups, if I didn't say that. I have 75 grams, which I think is about 2/3 of a cup of suet. You can use beef suet or vegetable suet, and this is that shredded suet that you can buy in the shops in England. And I also have some dried thyme. The recipe calls for fresh thyme, but I don't have any of that at the moment, so it wanted 3 teaspoons of, 3 teaspoons I think of fresh thyme, but I'm using about 3/4 of a teaspoon of dried thyme, so that is to flavour the suet. And in my pan I have 1 tablespoon of oil. And the first thing we have to do is to cook off the beef and then the onions, and so we'll get straight onto that. So with my oil heating, I've put my beef in, and I'm going to just break it up and brown it off until it just starts to brown. And I have this on a sort of medium heat. I don't want it on a high heat. So that meat is beginning to brown, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my onions in as well, and I'm going to sweat those down until they soften, and that's going to take about 5 minutes. So those onions seem to be getting a little bit translucent now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in my stock. And the Worcester sauce, and I'm going to season with some salt. This is to taste, obviously, however much you want, and some pepper. And I will taste this a bit later so I can check the seasoning. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this simmer for 20 minutes. And while it's simmering, I'm going to preheat my oven to 180 Celsius. That's 160 Celsius with a fan, 350 Fahrenheit. And then we'll be ready to make our suet topping, and I'll come back with this simmered, ready to go into our pie dish. And I'm using a 1.1 litre 9-inch pie dish basically, and it will fit in there perfectly. So I simmered the beef and onions in the stock for 20 minutes, and the stock reduced down quite a bit. There's still a little bit of stock liquid in with the beef, but I've poured everything into my pie dish and I've just leveled it off like that, and it's still steaming. So I'm going to set that to one side. My oven is preheating, as I mentioned, and in to my flour I'm going to put the baking powder and mix that around so that that then becomes the equivalent of self-raising flour. And then I'm going to add in the corn flour as well, and mix that around. And then I'm going to put my thyme in and my suet and mix it around. And then I'm going to slowly add the milk. I'll start off with a reasonable amount, and I'll keep adding the milk until I have a nice thick spoonable batter basically, because we're going to spoon this onto the top. So I'll just add in the last little drop of milk. I think that will be thick enough. If you do that and it seems to be too runny, you can always add a little bit more flour, but I think this will be okay. That looks fine to me. So then I'm going to spoon that mixture onto the meat. And I'm going around the edge first because I want to try to seal the edge in if I can. And I'm going to level that off a little bit. Like that. As you can see, that just fills the pan, and I'm going to put that into the oven, and I'm going to bake it for 35 minutes, and it should turn a nice light golden colour on the top. It should rise and turn a nice light golden colour and cook right through. And then I will test that suet crust with a skewer just to make sure. Then I'll take it out of the oven and I'll come back and show you the results. I baked the Teviotdale pie for 35 minutes. The top cracked a little bit, but it really doesn't matter very much. And there was a slight leakage, but that was fine because I stood the pie dish on a baking tray in the oven so that any spillage would go onto the baking tray and not into the oven. So that was fine. I've taken it out and it's still very, very hot, but I have taken a slice out so I can show you. And this is what it looks like. And I'm just going to have a taste of it. So you have the nice thick suet pastry crust and the layer of meat underneath. I'll just have a taste of this. It is very, very good. That suet crust is nice and soft inside, but it is very, very filling, and so I can quite understand that in sort of years gone by, when meat was in short supply for ordinary families, a pie like this would go an awful long way because the suet and the flour was relatively cheap, I suppose. So very, very tasty indeed. I hope the person who mentioned it to me, I can't think of his name now, likes the video and wants to try to make it. So that's going to be it for today. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please give me the thumbs up below and click to subscribe to my YouTube channel. In the top right hand corner of the screen there will be an eye that you can click on, and that will take you to a link for this recipe, and I'll put a link for it below the video as well, and I'll be back with another recipe in the very near future. So until then, happy baking.